Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 145. I couldn't even, I was trying to reflect on my week, and it's just one of those weeks where I feel like I don't remember anything that happened. You know what it is? It's because I've been recording these on like Tuesdays now and putting them up on Wednesdays, when I could break them up into Monday, everything that happened since Monday, that was a lot easier for me. But now it's like Wednesday to Wednesday. It's harder to keep track of. Do you ever do that? Like certain, if a month doesn't start on like a Sunday or a Monday, I completely, like, if the month shifts halfway through the week, I get really thrown off. I don't know what it is, but the way that my brain like organizes the calendar, if it's not neat and tidy like that, it just totally slips by me. So I was trying to think of what I did. Not much in the way of like new games, but we did watch some stuff, and there's a couple things I wanted to talk about. No questions from last time, so I guess I could just mention a thing that I went to. We unfortunately went to San Francisco recently because every year San Francisco is one of, I think, 3 places in the U.S. that has a quote unquote Japantown. That is literally what it's called. Most of the Japanese population centers were kind of wiped out by internment camps. Like, they kind of lost everything because of World War II. Well, I should say because of what we did to our own citizens during World War II, with extremely shaky justification. Internment's one of those things that, like, I feel like when like on the surface you're like, oh well, like no one really died or anything, but it was like, wait, that's really fucked up. Like imagine if like post 9/11 we just started rounding up like Muslims and just herding them into camps because any of them could be terrorists. Like, we did that shit in World War II. That was crazy. And guess what? Not a single Japanese person was a foreign spy or anything. Not a single one. There were no stories of that ever happening. There were foreign spies in the U.S. during that time period. And you know what? They were all white. None of them were Japanese. And so in exchange for this, for the national safety, Japanese people basically lost all of their businesses and all of the roots that they'd put down in their communities, and had to start over from scratch in a lot of places. And one of the few places where there was a consistent Japanese presence, I suppose, or a large population center, was in San Francisco. Obviously, we have a big Asian population here because we're right on the coast, and they have a Japantown. So it's a cool place to visit. Honestly, if you're going to visit the city at any point, and well, I feel like if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably the type of person who would be into Japanese stuff. Go check out. You can go check out Japantown. Specifically, they've got these two malls that are right next to each other. They're split up by a little plaza. It's called the Peace Plaza. It's a cool place. It's a cool little mall to walk around in. They have like a Kinokuniya bookstore, that kind of thing. There's like video stores. There's at least one video store. There's this whole cool little place. I've never bought anything from there, but I do just like looking around it sometimes when I go there. And they sell mostly like figures, or specific like model kits. So if you like, Gundam, like Gunpla and stuff like that, they've got a whole store for that. There's a lot of neat stuff. In that area. And obviously lots of Japanese restaurants. And once a year around the springtime, they do what is called the Cherry Blossom Festival. Now that is I don't know if it's a festival. It's called in Japan, but it's at least a season, cherry blossom season. It's for about 2 weeks in spring. when the cherry blossoms bloom, the national tree, I guess they call it the national tree. It's something like that. It's like a famous cultural symbol of Japan, the cherry blossom. They don't have a very long blooming period as far as I know. Like they kind of just like bloom for like literally that 2-ish week span, and then they're gone. They're just like skeleton trees after that, as far as I'm aware. So the Cherry Blossom Festival kind of coincides with the cherry blossom season in Japan, and it's just a period of like, it's always on the weekends. So 2 weekends in a row, they'll do kind of like a bunch of like cultural stuff. There's a bunch of stands and booths. If you go to the malls, there's like people selling stuff. There's like exclusive wares and things like that. It's just like a big cultural festival celebrating Japanese stuffs. And Katrina, my beloved, and her friends signed up because they have a parade. They've got this parade, and one of the components of the parade is there's a cosplay part, like unit of the parade, where they get a bunch of cosplayers because it's Japanese culture, you know. And she and her friends signed up, and now normally I've been to the Cherry Blossom Festival before. I fucking hate it. I hate it with all of my heart. It is. I already don't do that well with crowds, and the Cherry Blossom Festival is packed. It's so many people, and the streets and the sidewalks are really, they are not meant to have that many people on them. They are not meant to have that many people. The mall is not meant to have that many people in it. So I went there with her like 2 years ago because I hadn't actually been. I was like, oh yeah, that'll be fun. Just absolutely just rawed me out after I was done with that day. Like, holy shit. The exposure, the just crampedness of it. I've been to Japantown many times before, but never when it's that busy. And it's not like a pleasant experience for me. So normally I wouldn't go. I would not go again. But I want to support her. So, because I love her, I went to go with her and her friends so that I could stand on the side of the parade line and take a video of them. Let me tell you something. Okay, I'm going to give you some survival tips. Okay, so they were all like, oh no, it's going to be like 70 degrees. Like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Nope. See, that's the weather report. You got to read into it. You got to read multiple aspects of what the weather's going to be. You can't just look at the temperature. You have to look at there's the temperature. If we're talking about heat, right? Talking about heat, temperature, humidity, and the actual, like, how cloudy is it going to be? So, like, okay, if it's humid, that's like you want to look at the humidity percentage, because that's like the 10 times multiplier on the heat. If there's no clouds, that means that you're dealing with sunlight, and that changes how you need to prepare for it. So something, I probably talked about this before, but I'm gonna learn you guys something today. Again, if you haven't heard it, if you are going to an event and you're going to be outside and it's going to be sunny, there's two ways that you have to account for that to not get completely destroyed by the weather. Okay. So if assuming that the temperature is like pretty moderate, like, you know, that like 70 degree area, bring some water. Of course, bring some water and make sure that you're staying hydrated. But if the sun's out, you have to bring something to shield yourself from the sun. Like a sun hat or an umbrella or something. I always carry an umbrella with me for rain or sun. Sorry, for rain or shine. Literally, for rain or shine. This is something that I learned back when I was in high school, and I had to go play at football games in the pep band, because we would sit on the bleachers completely exposed in the direct path of the sun for like 3 or 4 hours on like a Saturday. And I would get home and I was cooked, literally and metaphorically. And I just couldn't do anything for the whole rest of the day. I was wiped out from that. So here's what I started doing. I started taking an umbrella to cover myself. And you know what? I'd get home and I felt fine. The sun is like the real killer. Straight up. For weather, the sun is the real killer on your body. Something about, I'm sure there's some science or whatever to it, but something about long-term exposure to sunlight really beats up on you. So if you can negate that with some shade, some kind of covering, like a hat or like an umbrella, like I said, or you just have a shady spot to stay in, that takes out that knocks out a big portion of your the adversarial weather. And then from there, it's just staying hydrated, because the heat, like the air temperature, that's going to make you sweat. The sun's going to beat the shit out of you, but the heat's going to make you sweat. And when those combine, you get really messed up. If you negate the sun, all you need to do is then counteract the sweating by just hydrating consistently. Just bring some water with you, and trust me, you will feel much better. And if you're worried, if it's an especially hot day, here's another pro tip: have a snack like a banana or something kind of salty early, like before you go or something like that, or while you're there, because the salt and those kinds of foods make it so that they like absorb water in your stomach, which means that it disperses more slowly. You're basically like a camel. Like, camels store water. Any animal that stores water, you're basically doing that if you drink or if you eat something salty before you drink the water. So it kind of absorbs into it and then slowly dissipates out. So you kind of like pace out your hydration. This is the culmination of my scouting experience, is how not to die in the sun. So that's my Taigan pro tip. Speaking of going to San Francisco, so Kat's mom was gracious enough to drive us up there, which was nice. We didn't have to pay for public transit. So we're getting in there, and I hate being in San Francisco. When I'm in SF, I feel like there's just this darkness caving in on me. I don't know how to explain it. I just can't stand being there. And like I just want to get out of the city. And we're driving up there, and I'm muttering to myself, I'm like, fucking, I hate being in San Francisco. And her mom goes like, oh no, this is nice, because we had to pull up around the city hall. Beautiful building, by the way. Beautiful, very Palladian, if you know what I'm talking about. Beautiful building. She goes, oh no, this place is just a nice area. It's a nice area. And as she says it, we look to the left, and I'm like, there's a guy pissing on the wall over there. And there's just a dude in broad daylight, just dropping the waterworks on this wall in public on the sidewalk, right? And we're like, oh, okay, cool. And he turns around, and he didn't put it away. He was flashing hog on the street. And everyone saw it. They're like, oh, fuck. Okay. Wonderful way to be welcomed into the city. Hate going up there. I only go up there for two things, which is for Katrina and for to go see Fleshwater at the end of the month. Those are the two. You will not get me up there unless there's some super special event or it's for her. You will not get me up. Just get me up there. Yeah, and the crowd sucked and all that sucked. But it was nice to see her in the parade. They thought they were going to be on a float, but the parade organizers didn't tell them that there were a limited number of spots on the float because it could only carry so many people. So they just had to walk the whole way, which they weren't really expecting. So I think Kat wasn't really one of her sandals broke, snapped. She wasn't expecting to do that much walking. So one of her sandals snapped halfway through the parade. and they had to stop at a Goodwill and buy her new ones. Yeah, so basically, we got home, I showered, we ate, I fell asleep for like 2 hours. I woke up, I felt so much better. That was an incredible nap. I felt rested and relaxed in body, mind, and soul. I was so chilled out. I did not care. I was like, you know what? We'll call it even. We'll call it even on the day. I want to talk about something that bothers me, like a small, minor, little gripe. I got a comment the other day on one of my side channel videos that said, "What's your main channel?" Because in that video, I mentioned, like, check out my main channel. Because I figure, well, if all the videos that I put no effort into are going to get 10 times as many views as the ones I actually put effort into on the main channel, I might as well use it to kind of like funnel people over there, you know, to advertise it a little bit. Even though that's not what I wanted the side channel to be initially, but at this point I feel like it's just good business. So I was like, yeah, check out my main channel. And someone said, how do I find it? YouTube hides that part on the channel, on your channel page. And I was like, oh. And I'm not groaning at them. It's not for them. That was like this stupid choice that YouTube made. I don't know why they made it. I don't know why they made this decision. But someone on their genius UI design team decided. So YouTube used to have on your channel page, it would have like home, videos, playlists, and then there was like a section called channels. And that was where you would click on that tab, and that tab would show you, I mean, I feel like everyone listening probably knows this, that tab would show you any other channels that were under that Google account, right? So it's like bound to a specific email. The email like is the Google account, and then from there you can have multiple different channels. So under my one like, I call it professional email because I'm trying to act like an adult, like a real adult. I have 4 different channels, right? And then I have like on my personal email, that's like my personal YouTube channel account and all that. And those are like separate, and I like it like that. So you used to have this channel thing, and that would list all of your other channels. And that was easy, and everyone knew how it worked. But then they were like, we want to start removing tabs. So this is another thing. They removed the About section, which I thought was annoying. The About section was a tab on the channel page, and that would give you, it would say the About, and it would have all your contact information and all that. And they were like, no, now we're going to make it this thing that every fucking person in the world misses. Like, YouTube's my job, right? I'm on this website every single day. I missed where it was now. It's right under the channel name. It's like, it'll show you like the first 10 words or something of the About section, and then it's like, oh, here's a little arrow, read more, and it's so obscure, it's so hard to find. I routinely forget where it is, and I forget to check it. It was like, it used to just be big button. Let me look at this, because that's where you went, and that's where they would list all of their either social media accounts or their email, which is useful for someone like me. And now no one knows where the fuck that is. Did you know where the fuck that is? Probably not, unless you pay attention to this stuff. If you're just a casual YouTube user, the About section just disappeared one day. So did the channel thing. You know what the channel thing is now? You have to manually add the channel list to your YouTube page, to the home page. So basically, when I go to my YouTube studio, my big command center for my channel, there is a section called Customize, and one of the customized things is what does your home page look like? And I get to choose from a bunch of different. Let me just pull it up. I get to choose from a bunch of different, under layout, a bunch of different types of, I guess, sections, like rows of stuff that I can show someone checking out. So I can choose, do I want to have a channel trailer? What's a featured video for, so that's something, so if you haven't subscribed, it'll show you my channel trailer, right? Which, I don't have one of those, but if you're already subscribed, it'll show you, I can set it to show you a different thing for whatever reason. There's a For You. That's new. Yeah, that's new. A For You section that you can toggle on or off. And then you have all of these, what they call featured sections. So you can put like, here's just essentially my videos tab. Here's all my videos chronologically. Here are live streams. Here is a playlist. It can be a single one. It can be all of the playlists I've created. It can be multiple handpicked playlists. Those can all go in a row. And then one of those is you can have channels. So this, it used to be like you could have like a channel box, which was a thing on the right side of your account, it was just like featured channels. And that would be either like your friends or, you know, people that you associated with, or it could be your other channels. And that was, again, an easy way to just point someone. It would always be on that side of the screen. It would always be there when you went to the channel page. It would always show you what the featured channels were. Now I have to put it in its own little row. So I have a featured channel called all my other. I have a little row that says all my other channels, because that's how I have to communicate that to people. And I made an effort, and you know how annoying it is I made how many people don't look for that, because it's not consistent. That's the problem. It's not consistent, because it can be at the top, it can be at the bottom. They might not even have one at all. They might not even have a section for other channels at all. As opposed to previously when it was just like, oh, does this person have other channels? Let me look in the one place that will for sure tell me if they have any other channels. Now it's like, I put it like at the very top on my side channel. I put it at the very top of the homepage, and people just don't even look there because they don't know where to look. It's inconsistent. It's annoying. I fucking hate the UI designers for this website. Hate's a strong word. I would beat them with a stick. That's what I would say. I would beat them with the stick. I'm sure they're nice. I am so curious, because for the longest time it's always been, my assumption is that Google needs people. They employ these UI designers, and the problem is that YouTube's user interface was pretty much perfected quite a while ago. They did not have to change it at all. There's like a couple little features, there's a couple little switch around things, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. And some I've even grown to like. But for the most part, it feels like most of the changes that come to the UI is for it feels like it's just there to exist. It's just there to be different. There's an awful, I hope it does not make it to like full release. There's an awful redesign of the YouTube page that makes like the whole fucking screen the video player, and it's awful. It's serious. Look up like the YouTube UI beta thing or something. I've seen pictures of it. It is horrific. It is awful. I hate it so much. I would install a script if it ever makes it to me. I will literally install a script to change it back. I will hold on as long as I can. Yeah. So speaking of YouTube, this interesting thing that I noted. I haven't seen anyone talk about it yet, but so there's the last time I uploaded a video, or the last couple of times I've uploaded a video, I was prompted while I was uploading to fill out a new part of the, like a new section of the upload details. I was like, oh, because they specifically point out like, hey, make sure you fill out this thing. And I was like, what's this? So when you go to upload a video now, there is a new question that you were asked, which is, does this video contain altered imagery, like video or audio of real people? Which is essentially, does your video have AI generated content? Like, the AI generated presidents or whatever, you would have to check yes. I think it's like yes, no, and some. Like there's some amount of that in your video, because some people might just use it for like a quick gag or something like that. For some videos, it's going to be the whole thing. And I found that really interesting, actually, because there was another thing where YouTube said that if any AI, any AI, it's not large language. It would be like, basically any AI model that was trained on YouTube videos, YouTube would claim that for their they would say that that's copyright infringement. On behalf of them, they made a public statement against AI exploitation of YouTube videos, which I appreciate? ? I do like it, but it invites this kind of strange question of, does YouTube claim copyright ownership over YouTube videos in that sense? I'm not sure. It could just be like, they've never made an attempt to, and I feel like that would actually be kind of awful. YouTube as a platform, like for everyone, YouTube as a platform kind of relies on a certain level of plausible deniability that they do not take ownership over all of the content that is published there. I mean, you'd have to be stupid. You'd really have to be stupid to do that, because you can't control what people are uploading. Like, I'm sure you could find some gnarly, crazy shit on some corner of YouTube. I know it exists, stuff that just slips by because it's under such obscure names or channels or whatever. I know it exists, and it's like, you don't want to claim that you really own that, so I'm not sure what their exact precedent is, that they own that, or that they could invoke some kind of copyright protection on that. But I do at least appreciate the sentiment, which I feel weird. I feel weird saying that about YouTube as a company, that I appreciate the sentiment of them kind of going up to bat for their audience, or for their user base, their actual, like, the people who generate, all of the value on their platform. All of it. So, thank you. I'd be very curious to know where that goes if they ever decide to act upon it, because that's been a big problem with sites like DeviantArt, essentially just auctioning off the vast libraries that they have of material to any AI model that wants to peruse it, which has a lot of ethical concerns. The AI thing, here's what's so messed up about the whole AI question, which is that it should be really cool, right? Like, it should be fucking awesome that you can, like, ask a computer to paint a painting for you. That should be super cool. But instead, whenever the topic comes up, there's kind of like this clutch of dread in your stomach where you're like, oh, a lot of people are going to lose jobs because of this. Like, that's stupid, right? This should be great technology. Like, isn't that so twisted? This is like a capitalism problem. This is legitimately a mondo problem with the idea of capitalism. Because if I go up to some fucking coal mine worker and I'm like, hey, you don't have to do this anymore. We can get a robot to do it for you. That should be like the best thing that ever happens to them. That should be amazing. Oh my God, I don't have to risk my life and get lung cancer just to support myself. That should be great, but instead it's like, how am I going to make money now? You took my job from me. And it's like it relies on there being some kind of a problem that like a hole you have to fill with human beings. And when we're allowed to like alleviate, like to remove the problem entirely, it's like actually there's a market incentive to keep the problem existing. Like AI art should be a cool little thing on the side or whatever, and you know, people should be just arguing over. People should be arguing. The problem ultimately should be like people talking about like, whoa, what's the could a computer make a piece of art? And that should be the discussion. But instead, it's, oh my God, so many people are gonna lose their jobs because of this. Because like, I don't know if you know this, but like your employer is not paying you they're not employing you out of the goodness of their own heart. They're employing you because they need people. That's the idea, is that the only reason the system even kind of works is because you need people to do things. But as soon as you don't need people, you mean absolutely nothing to them. It would be nice if there was a situation. I feel like in an ideal world, you just like wouldn't have to work. You just wouldn't have to do that. I say that as a failed YouTuber. Is that fair to myself? I don't know. I say that as someone who makes YouTube videos for not even a living. But like that would be great. No, I mean genuinely, I wish everyone was able to live like me. I think that would be awesome. I think everyone should be able to live the way that I do, where I don't have to worry really about. I think you should be allowed to live comfortably. Like not allowed. You should just be able to, as like a given. The level of technology and the amount of resources we have, we could feed everyone in the world, and the reason that we aren't is because of like supply chain stuff and quote unquote like missing incentives. And it's like, I don't know, it kind of drives me insane to think about stuff like that, because it's like you're like, well, why couldn't all of these problems just go away? And the answer that someone gives you is like, well, like, why can't everyone just have a place to live? And the answer is like commerce, the economy. And I'm like, oh, economics, the rules of money, something that we made up, the thing that doesn't exist, money, the fake magic thing that we pretend is real, this like apparatus on society that doesn't exist. That's a very good reason for everyone to starve. I want to talk a little bit about the game Stellar Blade. So there's been some controversy around this game, and I want to talk specifically about the art style of Stellar Blade. You can go look it up if you haven't. You might have heard about it recently. It's the game with that lady. It's that sci-fi game with that lady with the butt. And I remember, I think it got revealed at like a Game Awards or something like that. And I remember talking about it and not liking the way that it looked. I think I said something like, I thought the main character looked like a sex doll, which actually is actually not too far off because she's a robot, right? Like, I didn't even know she was a robot. I thought she was like a cyborg or something, but I was kind of on the money with that one. But that was my, like, I just got a weird, I didn't like the way that it looked. And to my surprise, I learned that the director of the game, including the art director and character designer and all that, is a Korean artist named Kim Hyung-tae. Now, I know Kim Hyung-tae's work from a bunch of other stuff that he's done. He's done a couple designs for video games. Yeah, the first one I ever saw, the first game I ever saw where he did the character designs was this gacha game called Destiny Child. Not like Destiny's Child, not the Beyonce group. Destiny Child, singular. Not non-possessive. Well, he did all the designs for that, and I just was immediately really taken by his art style and everything. He also did the artwork for a game called Magna Carta. Sorry, the correct Latin should be Magna Carta, which were these a small series of RPGs, these JRPGs on the PS2 and I think Xbox, original Xbox. And every time I've ever looked at his art, I just thought it was awesome. I love the way that he draws characters. I love his fashion. And I guess specifically because of the topic at hand, I really like the way that he draws women. Like I think it's very like when he draws like attractive hot women, it really works for me. And there's a great article. It's this interview from him with him from Gama Sutra. It's kind of a funny, yeah, that's a very appropriate title. Very appropriate name. And it's this great interview about his artistic process and how I very vividly remember him talking about how when he draws he draws male and female characters with two distinct approaches. And he said when he draws a male character, or he always starts with the character skeleton when he's sketching them out. Like what is their skeleton? And then for male characters, he then, on top of that skeleton, he draws their musculature. He draws their muscles. And for female characters, he draws their body fat. And so that leads to his male characters oftentimes being kind of like having these very hard lines and almost, like angular looking, like very sharp, kind of brickish looks to them with their shoulders or their elbows, like angled points and all that, and it's these very striking look to a lot of them. But for the effeminate characters, they're a lot more like they have a similar kind of exaggeration, but more in the direction of being like curvaceous and like squishy and stuff like that. And I've always really liked it. And every time I see his art or something that he's worked on, I immediately pick it out because it's so distinctive. Like, look up any of his art. Kim Hyung Tae, Hyungtae, and it's this very like you can instantly pick it out. But when I saw Stellar Blade, not only did I think it looked weird, I was not able to recognize his touch, right? His style. It knowing that it's him, I can kind of see it. Excuse me. I can kind of see it, but it just, there's just a lot of like, it's never been appealing to me, and I just kind of don't like the way that the game looks with its art style. I'm not a fan of it, and I was really trying to understand why. Like, what is not working for me about this? And I think it's just the fact that his characters aren't okay. There's like the characters, and then there's the environment that they're in. It's like the setting, and it's this very post-apocalypse, very urban, messed up war zone kind of sci-fi setting. And I don't think that his character designs fit very well into that. I feel like he's not great at making the mesh in there. A lot of the other stuff that I've seen from him is either like Magna Carta is this sort of unique looking kind of fantasy series, and when he draws, because I love his fashion, I think that's one of the most noteworthy things to me from him is the way that he draws the clothes that his characters are wearing. Like, there's characters from that like Destiny Child. I only played it for a very short time just because I liked his characters so much. Uh, uh, but like just the clothes that they were wearing are so memorable to me. And there's designs from all the games that he's worked on that still like stick out in my mind that I still think look really cool. And then I look at Stellar Blade, and it's really cold. It's really cold, and because the designs are very like, I guess it could be that I'm just not used to seeing that from him, but they're very robotic, obviously. Robotic, sci-fi, cyborgy, techno parts, and all that. And I look at it and I feel like just his characters don't mesh very well with that kind of an aesthetic. Like there's a weird clash there that I was watching some gameplay of it, and to me it feels like the characters almost look like they're out of place in the world because of that. I think that was the weirdness that I felt the first time I saw the game, because I just remember thinking like something just isn't meshing about the way that this character looks. She just looks weird. I think I said like sex doll looking, but that kind of like uncanny valley sort of effect, which is something strange. I don't think I've ever seen that. I don't think I've ever seen that with a video game, like a full CG video game that only appears with like with stuff in real life. But yeah, I would really implore you to go check out his artwork and compare it to what Stellar Blade looks like. This is no indictment against the game itself. I don't know. It could be cool. It could be fine. Or if you like it, this is just specifically why it doesn't work for me. I can't think of any other example where I really felt like I'm racking my brain where I really felt like an artist's style didn't really complement the setting or the tone of what they were making. Because that's the other thing, is that this is like directed by him. This is like all driven by him. So I think it's interesting that he chose this, and I still get this kind of dissonance from the art. Right? Like if it was just something he was kind of like just shoved into, I'd be like, okay, yeah, maybe it was just a bad choice on the studio's part. But yeah, I'm trying. Oh, there's got it. I feel like there's, I don't know, whatever it is. It's just, I think, well, let's see. I remember, who's the name of the Mega Man Zero illustrator? Mega Man Zero illustrator. Toru Nakayama. Yeah, I love his artwork. His stuff is great. And it's a very severe departure from the art style of kind of any of the other Mega Man series. Like, those games, like the classic series, the X series, even like the RPGs, like Battle Network and Star Force, and Legends even, like those all feel very, like there's little distinctions, right? You know, the X series it's a little grittier, it's a little edgier. Legends has a slightly, how do I describe it? Like I don't know. Legends has its own kind of slightly different look. Like it's a little more anime-ish, I would say, in certain ways. But they all feel like they're coming from a very similar place of being based off of Keiji Inafune's original art style, his original depiction. Like the classic series is almost like that's like the center point. That's like the guiding reference for the series. Like how does the world look? And then you jump to Zero and it's so different. I mean, just like the thin lines, the watercolors, tons and tons of little, like it has a completely different, even just design identity. Like there's all these little common elements that you'll see in those other series, like little details, like the characters' helmets will have little things like those little like ear vents. I don't know what you'd call it, the little ear circles. the big chunky gloves and boots and stuff like that. There's just these common elements, those lines that there'll just be like random kind of like lines, segments to add like little detail flourishes to certain parts of a design. And the Zero series is completely different. It looks nothing like that, but there's still an element. Like there's a spirit of the original in there because it's so bright and it's so saturated and colorful. And it still kind of retains like the energy of the original Mega Man games, of these extremely cartoony, colorful worlds, but with this kind of almost like hint of darkness or industrialism or something like that, kind of these other sort of aesthetics sort of creeping underneath. And that's why for me that still works. So I wouldn't. So for me, like something like that is a real extreme art style shift, but I never got a weird dissonant feeling from that. So I don't know why I brought it up as an example when talking about the Stellar Blade thing. I just want to talk about Mega Man Zero. Yeah, let me know if you guys have any examples of like a good artist, but in a weird, like not the right pick. A good artist who you didn't feel was the right pick for a certain tone or a certain work, or I guess in this instance, an artist who picked something that maybe you don't think gelled with their art style, right? I don't know. I just don't really. I haven't been interested in, despite the fact that I love his artwork and I think it's super cool, and it's cool that he's directing a game. I just haven't been interested in Stellar Blade, and I think that's sort of almost disappointment with the way that it looks, and its sort of failure to capture what I like so much about his art. I don't know. It just kind of like left me with a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. Magna Carta is like, it's a very fantasy look, and then Destiny Child had like this kind of modern, urban, contemporary pop kind of styling to it that I enjoyed a lot. And Stellar Blade is sci-fi, so almost like 3 different time period eras, right? I want to talk about a little anime that we started, which you've probably already heard of, but I'll at least share my initial impressions of it. Dungeon Meshi, aka Delicious in Dungeon. So Dungeon Meshi, here's a fun little tidbit. So Meshi means food in Japanese. It also means rice. They have a different word for food, Gohan. Gohan also means rice. Because in Japan, rice is just synonymous with the word food. So that's a funny little quirk of the language. There's like 2 or 3 helicopters going over my head today. I think they found me. So Dungeon Meshi it was manga that has been getting pretty popular, and it's getting an anime adaptation. I don't know if the season is complete yet. I don't think it is. But we watched the first 4 or 5 episodes of it because Kat, she loves the elf character, the elf girl, and Marcel, something like that. So we put it on. It's on Netflix, and yeah, I really like that show. So essentially, Dungeon Meshi is. It's funny because it's one of those concepts that I look at, I hear, I vaguely knew what it was about, but once it was I sat down to watch the show, I was like, why have I never seen this before? Why haven't I seen anything else that did this idea? Maybe not as hardcore, but even just some of the ideas. It feels so, it's one of those great concepts that feels, it doesn't just feel fresh, it feels obvious. Like, oh, of course. Why doesn't this existed? The premise of Dungeon Meshi is that it is a fantasy show about a little group of adventurers who, the main character's sister has been captured by a dragon at the bottom of a dungeon. And they were fighting this dragon. She cast this spell because they were all gonna die, and she cast this spell to send them back up to the surface. So they're going to plunge back into the depths of the dungeon, but on the way, they realize that one of their real problems, one of the biggest hurdles that they're facing, isn't necessarily the difficulty or the challenge of the dungeon. It's that they aren't eating properly. They aren't eating enough food, and they're just hungry. They're hungry, and they're not on their A game because of it. So usually what you'd find, it's taking a little bit off of that idea of that you'll see in RPGs, where there'll be, you got to go into town to buy food, and then go take that food into the dungeon, and that'll like fuel you through. The big difference is that they make this connection, and this is where the kind of freshness of the idea comes in for me. They make the connection. Well, specifically the main character, he's like, wait a second, why don't we just eat the monsters that we're killing? Like, we're killing all of these monsters. They're all edible, or most of them should be edible. Like, they're just like animals and stuff like that, or plants. Shouldn't we be able, and obviously because all of these monsters exist down in this dungeon, on these multiple floors of this dungeon, clearly there's some kind of ecosystem where something will eat something else, and they're able to eat each other. So why don't we just do that? And so they meet this dwarf named Senshi, who's like a cooking expert, and he's been living in the dungeon for years. And he kind of becomes their sort of cooking guide, as they all kind of venture through this dungeon and use the various skills to overcome little challenges every episode, and it always builds up to them finding a new thing to eat. And it's one of those, again, it's this idea that feels so obvious, where it's like the loop, but because of the existing, I guess, trope, or what I'm already familiar with from other media, it just never occurred to me, right? Because it's always been like, you go into like old RPGs, and you go play Ultima, and it's like, you go into town to buy food, and then you, with your gold, then you go into the dungeon to fight monsters. The monsters give you gold, and then the gold finances the food that you get and the armor and equipment upgrades that you buy the next time you're in town. And for some reason, it's just never occurred to anyone that, like, wait, what if there wasn't a point where you had to like circle back? What if you could use the monsters to hunt and eat? I'm pretty sure Monster Hunter probably does something like this, but I've never played Monster Hunter, so shut up. And I really like watching this show. I really want to like play a game that uses this as a central like system. Wouldn't that, like, I think that would be a really neat way to add a level of interactivity to the monsters that you're killing. That like they can be used, you can harvest their materials, the things from killing them, and use it to like craft more items, or maybe make potions out of them to cure stuff, or just food, right? And food might have different effects and do different stuff for you. That stuff is like that's a really cool system, and I can't really, if it exists, I'd love to hear about it. If there's a game that is like that, I'd love for you, let me know. But this is the first anime that I've seen do anything with that concept, and even in just like 4 or 5 episodes in, it's done quite a bit. Like, I was surprised at how much of the show is about like based off of kind of the rules of like ecology and understanding the ecosystem. So like there's these so many neat, cool little ideas. Like, I guess this is kind of spoilers, but there's an episode where this is not far at all into the show. So, I don't think this is going to be big spoilers, but there's an episode where they there's all these like suits of armor. The living armor is what they call them. And what is his name? Laios? He's like the main knight guy. And he's the one who's obsessed with like cooking everything and finding out what everything tastes like. And they reach this point where they're in the dungeon where there's a bunch of living armors and they're guarding something. And they don't know quite what, and they're having trouble getting through this area. They have to retreat. And Laios is like, I wonder what they taste like. And they're like, it's metal. You can't eat metal. They're armor. They're animated by like magic or something. And he's like, oh, okay. So they go through the episode, and Laios has this one-on-one encounter where he just notices that there's like the armor, the way that it behaves is weird to him. He's like, oh, he knocks off its head. And then he notices that it picks it back up and straightens it, and it kind of like, it feels like it looks at him. And he's like, that's weird if they're being animated by magic or something. And if they don't need the head to see, why is it going to find the helmet, right? Why does it move a certain way? And he's putting all these little observations and clues together until finally he like knocks off the helmet again, and he takes his sword and he like jams it through one of the plates. So there's like 2 layers. He realizes that there's 2 layers to the armor, and he like cracks it open. He wedges it open, and he discovers that there's actually a colony of like mollusks living between the armor plates. And all of these mollusks, like shellfish, the way that shellfish will find some kind of shelter, a shell, and hole up inside of it. All of these mollusks have gotten into these pieces of armor and connected together to form a colony and act like, by just expanding and contracting, act like muscles. And that's how the suits of armor move, which is such a cool idea. It's not magic at all. It's actually like there's this animal inside of it. And naturally that means, of course, they can eat them. So they make like, they essentially, like, it's literally like peeling mussels, like peeling shellfish. And they make like a whole meal out of this one suit of armor. And it's just like this really cool idea. There's this whole thing about the dwarf, and he grows on one of the levels of the dungeon. There's like golems. The golems are obviously made of dirt. And he basically uses the golems as gardens. So he like plants. So what he does is they have like this core inside of them where they're kind of activated by this magical sort of totem inside. So he like beats them up. He knocks the totem out of them. And then when they're down, he essentially like plants vegetables in them and makes sure that he's rotating his crops so that the soil stays healthy. And then at the end of that, he reburies the totem inside so that they'll reform after a while. And essentially the golems will naturally protect themselves and each other, which means that the vegetables are going to stay protected. And a character even asks, like, oh, are the vegetables kind of like parasites because they're digging the roots into them? And he's like, well, no, actually, because the roots spread throughout the soil, it actually makes it firmer, which makes the golem stronger. And so it's actually like a symbiotic relationship, like how there's certain, birds that will rest on certain animals and like pick the fleas off of them for food and stuff like that. It's that kind of a relationship. And just like, that's such a cool idea. And I can't believe I've never heard of anything that used a fantasy creature concept like that. Like, oh my, it was so cool. Using a golem as a vegetable garden. It's so cool. And the golems, there's a bit about how the golems naturally keep out the stronger monsters from the lower floors. So if all the golems were to disappear, the ecosystem of the whole dungeon would get thrown off, because there would be nothing stopping the big monsters from going up to the higher floors. Excuse me. And it's great. It's really fun. There's the main character, is just like this kind of, he's like this friendly, just very curious knight guy who's just really into the idea of cooking everything. Senshi is this little dwarf dude who is like an expert at cooking, and he's always very just kind of stone cold. Like, he does not care. He's great. Marcel is an elf wizard, and she's the picky eater. She's a little bit like, she's a little too good for a couple things, you know, but she's cute. And she's usually the one who has to kind of like, she has to try something new to find out that she likes it, and then she's cool. And then what is his name? Chucklefuck? It's like Tuck Chuck or something like that. He's the thief, and he checks traps for them. There's a great episode where there's this whole room that's full of hidden traps that trigger when you step on certain stones in the floor. And they start using the traps as basically like makeshift like cooking stations. So like the big guillotine that drops from the ceiling and would slice them in half, they drop like the body of like this giant bat that they killed. They put the body on there, and then they have the thief guy step on the specific stone to trigger the trap, and it drops down, and it like that's how they like slice up the body. Or like this flame trap that was supposed to just like incinerate them. They use it to like they fill a pan with oil from the trap, and then have it like they put some ingredients in the pan, and then they have them step on the trap so that they can shoot fire all over it, and then like deep fry the ingredients and make a whole meal out of it. And it's like just cool. Like, oh man, this is so neat. It's such a creative, cool show. It's like, it's one of those things where there's so many manga that are extremely specific. I've heard that manga is like an anime or like fetishistic genres. Not fetishistic in like a sexual way necessarily, although they can be. But in the sense that it takes this one thing, like one topic, and it hyper focuses on it, and it just goes all in. And like, this manga exists because the writer likes this thing. He likes, you know, Hanafuda. This guy is really into, like, reading Dr. Stone was like, okay, Riichiro Inagaki is just mad into science. He just loves all kinds of science, and he's super into it. Just like, this guy likes this thing, and he's gonna write a story to make you like it too, motherfucker. How many like fitness-based manga are there about like, yeah, we're gonna like lure you in with like the cute girls working out and getting all sweaty, but actually there's gonna be like a 2-page explanation of how to exercise safely, and like how to exercise properly with like safe movements and stuff like that, and what parts of the muscles that they work out. And it's like, that's how they get you. And this feels like a story from a guy who is really into fantasy stuff. And I guess like there's like a whole group of topics related to like hunting animals, like hunting and harvesting, you know, plants and animals, and how you make those, and then using all the parts of them to make food. I don't know what you'd call the group of that. Hunting and gathering, I suppose. Really into that idea, and he really likes fantasy, and some part of him was like, what if you combine those? Almost like there's a frustration. I can, like, for 10 years, he's been like, why hasn't anyone written a story about fantasy? Why haven't I ever seen a fantasy story where they actually kill the monster and then they eat it, you know? Why haven't I seen that as the focus of a show or something? And he just wrote it. He just wrote that story. And his years and years of little scribblings of ideas, like, you know, golems could be like a vegetable garden, and you can use traps to help you cook your food and prepare it, and all this all this stuff that he's just tossing into his story, with some very charming, fun characters. And I don't know, it just, every single episode we watched, and again, we didn't even watch half the season, but every single episode we watched, we finished it, and I was like, that was a good episode. That was a cool episode. Every single one. I really can't recommend it enough. And from what I've heard, the manga the anime is only covering a certain portion of the manga so far, and it is consistently good. Everyone that I've heard talk about it says, "Yep, dungeon meshi, delicious in dungeon," in English, is consistently good. So I would definitely give that one a watch if that sounds interesting at all. If you like just kind of like fun, creative stories, like taking something that you're probably familiar with and going at it from a perspective you never would have thought of before. Okay, kind of speaking of, this is like an aside. I saw there was like an anime adaptation for this manga called Ranger Reject. I read the first like 30-ish chapters of Ranger Reject back when it was coming out, and I liked it quite a bit. I don't know if it went downhill or anything, but maybe check that one out. Ranger Reject is it's again talking about like this is this guy's thing, and he wrote a story about like what if you know, a little subversion or new perspective on it. It's clearly from a dude who was mad into tokusatsu shows and Super Sentai, which, for those of you who don't know, is like Power Rangers or Kamen Rider, right? So, because apparently, like, I remember reading comments and discussions about the various chapters, and there's tons of like little references and things that are clearly like in jokes among fans of those shows that are like parodied or represented in some way in the story. Ranger Reject is basically, the idea was that, if I remember this correctly, it's been a while since I read it. The idea was that it was like a classic, it's like a classic Power Rangers type show where the Power Rangers, they have to get together every week for the scheduled battle. they go on a schedule. And they get into their, where they have to fight the aliens. The alien ship comes down. And they send down their like putties, you know, like their grunt units. They get beat up, and then one of them transforms into a big monster, and then the Power Rangers beat them up, and they save the day, and the whole city loves them, and they're national heroes, right, in Japan. And then but the story's not about them. The story is about one of the little grunt guys, one of the aliens, and you find out that essentially the backstory was the aliens came down, and they were going to invade Earth and take over. But the Power Rangers, like the Rangers, they legitimately formed, and then beat the shit out of the aliens. And they beat them so hard that the aliens were basically going to get wiped out if they didn't just retreat from the planet. But the Rangers forced them into an agreement where basically, because they got so much publicity from saving the world, they were like, just stick around and like once a week come down and just do like a Monster of the Week show, essentially. Just like send down one of your guys and then we'll come beat you up, and then we won't wipe you out. We won't kill you. And so they're basically stuck in this situation, and I just remember like they're in the ship and they're trying to figure out like, oh fuck, like what do we do this week? Does anyone have any ideas? What do we transform into? Because they can shapeshift. That's their thing, is they can like shapeshift. And one guy's like, like a manticore or something, and they're just like throwing ideas out, and they're like like a lion head, and like your arm is like a snake or something. And then the main character is one of the putty guys who basically decides that he's had enough, and he is going to infiltrate. He's going to use his shape-shifting powers to infiltrate the Ranger Association and take them down from the inside. And I remember it being a pretty fun story. while I was reading it for like 30 chapters with like little twists and turns. And it's like this weird little espionage story with tons of like little tokusatsu nods and references and some fun little action sequences. I'm probably missing a couple details, but that was like the basic premise. So that's like, yeah, exactly that. Just like, here's a thing that you're familiar with, but here's a spin on it. That's kind of neat. Speaking of more anime stuff, this is a very anime heavy podcast today. We went to go see the Spy Family movie, Spy Family Code White, which has been out for a while in Japan, but Kat really wanted to go see it in theaters. Excuse me. And it wasn't in theaters. I mean, it's a very like Christmas winter themed movie. So it was out in like January in Japan, but it didn't come to the US until right now in April. So we went to go see it, cause we both like it. Kat's a huge Spy Family fan. I enjoyed the show quite a bit as well. And, she had like these free ticket things to Cinemark, and I was like, all right, cool. So Spy Family Code White, it is exactly what you would expect and I guess want out of a Spy Family movie. It feels like 4 or 5 episodes of the TV show just combined into one thing. Like what, when they'll do like a kind of larger like story arc that takes up maybe like a quarter or half of the season. That's basically what this felt like. A pretty like, yeah, like pretty dense film. I was never bored. It was pretty good. I liked it. It was literally just like, if you like Spy Family, this is just more of that. It's the characters doing exactly what they usually do. Except they're going to a new setting. They kind of like, they take a family trip to like a snowy area in the winter. Very pretty looking. It's very like a, German kind of winter market kind of vibe. They already live in like fake Germany, so it's that's the idea. Or I guess they're going up to, I guess this is a little bit like Switzerland. They're going to like Switzerland. Maybe that would be the equivalent. And they go on this train ride so that they can get a thing for Anya for school. And then, wouldn't you know it, there's this super important military project with crucial information stored on this like piece of microfilm that has been hidden inside of a chocolate. And Anya ate the chocolate, so now the fucking military wants to cut her open. They gotta slice her open, and they're hunting her down, and then Spy Family hijinks ensues. Just the regular like comedy action with the characters. Again, if you like the show, you will like this. Animation wise, it was even like pretty similar to the show, like pretty much the same. I couldn't tell. Maybe like a little more consistently high quality, but yeah, basically the same level of animation that you'd see on the show, with one major exception, and that is that this movie has the most important shitting scene in all of cinema history. I couldn't believe not only how well animated it was, but how long it went on and how surreal it is. That was crazy to watch. I don't even want to talk about it besides that. There's a scene in this movie where shit gets real. Literally. But we went to go see it in a pretty well populated theater, Pretty well. I have no idea. My whole sense of what a packed theater is so thrown off because I don't remember going to the movies that much pre-pandemic. And then during the pandemic, it was like there would be maybe 6 people in the whole theater. So when I go to movies now, I'm like, is this a lot of people? Is this like a good audience? Like, I don't even know. Like, I have no barometer for what a full or empty audiences, but it felt like a pretty good amount of people. At least like a little over half the theater, half if not over half, was there, and this was like 3:30 on a Saturday or something like that. There was like this group of guys who were they reacted a little too much, if you know what I mean. It's just like those dudes who came to and I knew like the moment there was some, they were just like annoying. I don't know how to there's really no other word for it. They were just like kind of annoying anime guys where there's like okay, so this isn't even spoilers. Also, apparently the movie's non-canon, but like who cares? Like it doesn't matter. It's just like a spy family story. There's no major status quo shakeup, but one of the plot elements is, if Lloyd doesn't successfully do this thing in this location, then then the operation of like their fake family might have to come to an end, right? And they say that, right? And the guys next to us just way too loudly like, what? No! And I'm like, okay, dude, fucking calm down a little bit. Yeah. Not like a theater ruining level of annoying, but so kind of just like, okay, dude. I think the worst theater experience I ever had. Comment down below your worst theater experience. I'd love to hear them because they're so awful. I think the worst experience I had wasn't even that bad. It was when I went to go see Avengers Endgame, and I sat next to this family. I sat next to this big family, and the dad had never watched a Marvel movie before, but his kid had. His son had, who was like maybe in middle school, and the entire movie he was, who's that? What's their, do they like each other? Who are those people? Who's that? What are they talking about? The whole fucking movie to his son, and his son was doing that. He was dropping the dictionary on him. That's Captain Marvel, and then she was in this movie, and I was right next to them, and I was like, dude, okay, oh my fuck, it was really annoying. I'm getting worked up just thinking about it. Like, if you are going. That was like the final movie of like a 24 movie series, essentially. You walked in on like the finale of finales. And if it was me, right? I had enough context because I'd seen Infinity War, and then also they would usually talk about the new Marvel movies on Half in the Bag, the Red Letter Media show. So that's how I kept like kind of abreast of what was going on with those films. So I had like enough context that I basically knew what was going on. Also, I just know the characters from like the actual comics themselves. But if I was in a position where I was walking into a film that, like a series that late, I would just like cut my losses. I would just say, you know what? I'm just going to assume. I'm just going to try to fill in the blanks as much as I can. And anything that I don't get, I'm just going to assume, okay, whatever. You know, I don't need to know. I don't need to. I'll just accept that my experience is going to be weird. I'm not going to lean over to ask every 5 seconds to have someone explain the plot to me of like the 80 other films in this franchise. That was annoying. What else happened? I remember, there's like a couple other kind of annoying experiences I've had in theaters, but I want to say for the most part, the experiences have been pretty okay at the very least. And you know what? I will say, speaking of that Endgame showing, that was also the best experience I've ever had in a theater. I can spoil Avengers Endgame at this point, right? If you don't want to, then I just skip to the next segment. I don't know. I timestamped this stuff for a reason. But man, that moment when the hammer flies away, and you're like, what? And then it pans over, and Captain America caught the hammer. That was the biggest pop I've ever heard in a theater for anything. That was like, I remember going, oh shit. that was the hypest moment I've ever had sitting in a theater. And that alone, I think justified going to the theaters for that experience. Like, that whole crowd reaction really added to it. Because I remember just, in the back of my head always knowing, like, yeah, like a couple people throughout the comics have wielded Mjolnir. Like notably, like, you'd always hear that example. If you've ever watched anything on that topic, be like, oh, notably Captain America is one of the few people who's ever wielded Thor's hammer. Because it belongs to people who are worthy to wield it, and it's very specific times of like the maximum stakes. Captain America, because he's the G, has the willpower to deserve it. But it's just one of those things that's like in the back of my head, and it never occurred to me that they would actually do that until it happened, and it was like, oh shit. Oh fuck yeah. There's nothing complicated about it. It was just, oh fuck yeah, that's awesome. So it was the worst experience. It was the best experience. So I have to give it up. Also, that family had this annoying ass little kid who got bored halfway through the movie. That's a long movie too. They got bored halfway through, and just like the mom just gave them like the whole iPad, and they're on it at like 100% brightness in the theater right next to me. It was awesome. Anyway, the Spy Family movie. If you like Spy Family, you will like the movie. It's like almost 2 hours. It's a pretty lengthy film, all things considered. I thought that it would be. I thought it would be a little like thinner than that, but no, it is also like, I mean, a lot of stuff happens, and it's just kind of regular, just fun Spy Family hijinks. So I give that a Roger Ebert thumbs up to Spy Family Code White. Now, what was maybe even more interesting than the movie was what happened on the way back from the movie. So Kat and I took the bus back home, and we're on the bus, and it's, is it the worst bus ride ever? Not real. Well, okay, by my standards, not really, but she was getting a little freaked out because there was this, there were two, okay, so there was this homeless woman on the bus. She's got like fucked up hair. She's being really loud, and she's getting up and like walking around the bus, that kind of thing. And for me, it's like, just don't make eye contact. Like, I see that stuff. That stuff is pretty common, Just don't make eye contact, because that like aggroes them. That like pulls aggro. That's what it is. And just, like it's usually not actually a big deal. I just kind of get used to it. Rarely does anything. The worst you're gonna get, like, that's usually the worst that'll happen. Someone gets up and they're stomping around and yelling. You can survive that. You're not gonna die. But she's getting like a little antsy, and I'm like, okay, just calm down. It's fine. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. They're usually not violent. Usually. So we make this stop, right? Or the bus starts pulling over, And this lady is like, no, 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 no. This is a different lady. A different lady's like, oh, no, no, no. The next stop. Because I think she pulled on the thing like a stop early. She pulled the cord a stop early. She's like, no, 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 next stop. She does this thing where she gets off, where she's just standing there, and the bus isn't moving, and then she gets off the bus, and then she gets back on the bus like a minute later. It hasn't moved. The bus has not moved. Eventually, she just gets off for good, right? She just gets off and she doesn't come back. And, 5 minutes, I was like, okay, sometimes what happens is that the way that the bus schedule works is that they have a specific time that they have to leave a certain stop. So they can get there 5 minutes. They might get there 5 minutes early. But that's because if they arrange the time schedule, if they arrange the schedule for the bus by when they're supposed to get there, that's not super reliable. Because they could get there early. So it's actually more useful to know when the bus is scheduled to leave that stop, because just as long as you get there before 4:35 when it's scheduled to leave, you should at least be able to catch it, right? That's the idea. Whereas if it gets there at 4:35, you have no idea how long it's going to stay there, right? Now, obviously, that gets thrown off because the bus is always late. It is always late, but it's at least more of a useful metric, right? So I figure at first, okay, maybe we're just ahead of schedule. That happens sometimes. Sometimes the driver will literally just park at the stop and like get out and get lunch. I've seen that happen before because we're like 5 minutes early or something like that. So 5 minutes turns into 10 minutes, before you know it. And 10 minutes turns into 15 minutes. And people start getting a little weirded out of why we're not moving. The other thing is that the bus itself was like 30 minutes late to our stop. And then when he got there, he pulled into the wrong stop because it was at like a bus station. He pulled into the wrong one. So we went to go check like, hey, is this actually, because the sign at the top said it should have been our bus. And he's like, yes, I pulled in the wrong stop. This is the right bus. So we're already like 30 minutes late, leaving the theater. Now we're delayed by like 15 minutes. Like, I don't know why we're just sitting here. And this whole time, there's this homeless lady just kind of making people uncomfortable. And at one point, in fact, she gets out of the bus, she steps out, and she pulls her pants down and just starts dumping it on the bus. And it's like, everyone was, and I don't know, I was laughing. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is that bus lifestyle. I'm resurrecting an old segment I did on the podcast from a while ago. I called it, There's Plenty of Reasons Not to Take the Bus. We're doing that again. So she just starts dumping it. She gets back on the bus. People are starting to walk around. They're like moving away from her. Now here's the thing. Across from her, keeping a slightly lower profile, there's a woman who doesn't like outwardly look homeless, but she is acting kind of weird. And she's kind of she's kind of like, I don't know, aggravating is the right word, but she's sort of stoking the fire. She's kind of engaging with the homeless lady who's like tweaking out, right? And you don't really want to engage with them because like it usually just makes the situation first, but she's kind of like making it worse just by like engaging with her. She's got like these grocery bags and stuff, and I don't know, I didn't really know what her deal was. Eventually, Kat leans over and she's like, I think I know what's going on. I think the driver is calling the police and he's waiting for them to get here. And I was like, oh, okay. I've never actually seen that before. That hadn't occurred to me. And I remember this lady walked up to the front to the driver and asked him why we weren't moving. And I kind of caught what he said back to her. And he said, we're trying to do a bus transfer. Now, typically a bus transfer happens if there's some kind of mechanical failure for the bus. It happens every once in a while where you pull into a stop or maybe the bus is like low on gas or something than they expected, and you just have to switch buses. And that's like not, if you take the bus enough, that's not like unheard of. So I was thinking, okay, that could be it. Or that could be the cover for him calling the police. And I'm like, oh, are they, it could be, because like, I have never seen a bus driver ever call the police on a homeless person who was like making a racket on the bus. They kind of just let it rock. I've never even seen them get kicked off or anything. It just happens. They're just allowed to just hang out, I guess. So I was thinking like, that's kind of out of character. It could be, it could be that he's trying to get her removed. And then I was thinking, what if she has a warrant out for her arrest, right? What if he realized that she has a warrant? So we're stopped for like 20 minutes, and eventually this guy walks up next to the stop. He's wearing like a reflective vest, and he's from the transit authority, like the local transit authority. And I kind of peek out the bus, and I see that he hasn't arrived in a different bus. He's arrived in a van, like a city van. And he's talking to the driver outside for a while, like quite a while. And eventually they get back in. The dude in the vest makes a call. Everyone is told to get out of the bus. We're all asked to leave the bus except for those two women at the front, the homeless lady and the kind of shady lady. The shady lady. We're asked to leave. They stay. And then 2 police cars pull up. They brought out like the entire National Guard to take care of these 2 people. They go inside, and I just start seeing them taking out the grocery bags. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I thought they were going for the tweaker lady. She gets off the bus, and she just walks away. She just walks off, and I'm like, no way. Was it the other woman? Was it her? Did she have a warrant or something? So what we think happened is that we think that she stole something that was in the bags, or she had some kind of a warrant or something, right? And the driver might have recognized that, and that's why he called the police on her. Neither of us really saw her get arrested, which is weird. Just when we got back on the bus, she was gone. And then we just kept on trucking from the same bus. And yeah, so that was like that was the dinner and a show that we got. There's just this weird, I was chilling. Kat was like, oh, I want to go home. For me, honestly, that was like a way that I was relieving stress, was watching this crazy situation unfold. Like, that's the scenic route, baby. Like, that's the entertaining bus ride. I can at least take solace in the fact that if I'm inconvenienced, I at least want it to be an entertaining inconvenience that I can tell people about later on, say, a podcast or something. So, let me reiterate, there are many reasons not to take the bus. But there are also some reasons to take the bus, I guess is what I'm getting at. So that was just a weird, just another day on the Samtrans, baby. And after that we did Cherry Blossom Festival, and then I came home, and yeah, haven't done, and now it's today when I'm recording this. I want to finish, okay, before I sign off, I've been meaning to talk about Dark Souls 3, because I'm very close to finishing the game, and my opinion of it has metamorphized. My opinion on it has changed a lot as I've been playing it, and I kind of want to I don't feel comfortable talking about it now. I feel like when I was halfway through the game, I was like, I could have confidently told you how I felt. And then I was like 3/4 through, and I was like, I'm like 70. I have like basically 2 bosses left. And I'm really not sure how I feel about it exactly. So I want to finish it before I actually give my final. And I want some time to actually digest the experience first. So hopefully I'll be able to talk about it next podcast. Because I don't know, I've had an interesting experience with it. Yeah, so that I would have talked about that this week, but nope, I'm very close, but I'm not close enough. So other than that, I think I'm going to call it a day. Thank you so much for listening, if you've been listening this far. If you have a question, please leave it down in the comments below, but phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. Video is in progress. Business as usual. Nothing else to say. Bye.